Some doors should never be left open, not even for the people you love, because sometimes something else walks in before they do. This story isn't about murder or madness. It's about the night my father left our front door open and what followed him inside. You know that uneasy feeling when you wake up at night and realize something's wrong? That's how it began for me. It was 3:17 a.m. when I heard a knock on my bedroom door. Soft, slow, like whoever was knocking didn't want to wake my father. Only me. The thing is, my father was out of town that night, and I was 9 years old, completely alone. What happened that night still haunts me. I think about it every time I close my eyes, every time I hear the wind touch my window, because what came through that open door wasn't human. It was the summer of 1985. I was 9 years old, and we lived on the outskirts of a quiet town in Pennsylvania. Our house sat at the end of a gravel road that wound between fields and forest. Back then, my father worked night shifts at the paper mill, and my mother was a nurse who sometimes took weekend shifts in town. Most nights, it was just the two of us, me and Dad, in that creaky old house surrounded by woods that always seemed too dark for comfort. Our nearest neighbor was half a mile away, and the only light at night came from the porch bulb that buzzed with moths. I used to fall asleep to the sound of cicadas and the soft of my father's old radio playing in the kitchen. It was a safe sound, a familiar rhythm that told me everything was fine. But one Friday evening in July, that rhythm broke. It had rained most of the day, leaving the air thick and heavy. My father had just gotten home from the mill, covered in sawdust and tired. My mother was working a night shift at the hospital, so it was just me and him again. I remember how he smiled when he handed me a paper bag from the diner, a cheeseburger and fries. We ate together in the living room while the rain tapped softly on the windows. The power flickered once but didn't go out. I remember that part so clearly, how my father chuckled and said, "Old lines can't handle a little storm, huh?" Around 9 p.m., the phone rang. It was one of those old rotary phones that clanged like a bell. I watched Dad answer it. He listened for a while, his face turning serious. When he hung up, he told me, "Grandpa's not feeling too well. I've got to go check on him. He's just 20 minutes down the road. I'll be back before midnight." He told me to stay in bed, keep the TV on low if I got scared, and most importantly, to keep the front door locked. He kissed me on the head, grabbed his jacket, and left. I remember watching him pull out of the driveway, his headlights cutting across the wet gravel. I watched them disappear into the trees. Then I remember realizing I hadn't heard the click of the lock when he closed the door. I told myself I must have missed it. I told myself it was fine. But as I turned off the living room light and started up the stairs, I heard it. The front door creak opened just a few inches. At first, I thought it was the wind. The air was still heavy from the storm, and the old wood swelled and groaned all the time. But this sound wasn't just with shifting. It was slow, deliberate, like someone easing it open. I froze halfway up the stairs, staring at the narrow gap below. The porch light still burned outside, spilling a dim yellow glow across the floor. Rainwater glistened on the threshold. I waited for my father's shadow to move through the doorway. Nothing. The door stayed slightly ajar. "Dad," I called out. No answer. I crept down the stairs one slow step at a time, my heart hammering. I remember how the floorboards groaned under my bare feet. I could hear the sound of rainwater dripping from the gutter outside. When I reached the bottom step, I pushed the door shut quickly and locked it. Click. Then I ran back upstairs, dove into bed, and pulled the blanket over my head like a shield. I lay awake for hours, listening to every creak inside the housemaid. Around midnight, I finally heard my father's truck pull back into the driveway. The relief that hit me was so strong, I almost cried. I heard him come inside, lock the door, and go straight to his room. I wanted to tell him about what happened, but something stopped me. I was afraid he'd laugh, or worse, that he'd think I was just making things up. So I said nothing. The next morning, sunlight spilled across my room. My father was already outside, fixing something by the shed. Everything looked normal again. The door was closed, locked tight. I convinced myself that I had imagined it, that the storm wind had blown it open, that my mind had played tricks. But that night, I woke up to a sound that made my stomach turn cold. It was footsteps. Soft, slow, dragging footsteps coming from the hallway outside my room. At first, I thought it was my father going to the bathroom, but the steps didn't sound right. They were uneven, like someone walking barefoot on the wooden floor, taking long, deliberate strides. I held my breath and listened. The sound stopped right outside my door. Then came the knock. 3 soft taps. I couldn't move. I couldn't even breathe. The knocking stopped. For a few seconds, there was silence. Then I heard a whisper, faint but clear, right next to the door. "Can I come in?" It was a man's voice, but it wasn't my father's. It was lower, quieter, and it sounded like it was coming to the keyhole. I didn't answer. I heard slow breathing on the other side of the door, then the sound of footsteps walking away, back down the hall. The next morning, my father told me he'd slept straight through the night. I wanted to tell him, but once again, something held me back. Part of me still believed maybe I was dreaming. That night, though, I made sure to lock my bedroom door. A few nights later, I woke up again, this time to the sound of my bedroom doorknob turning. It twisted once, slowly, then stopped. Then again, click, click, like someone testing it, trying to see if it would open. My heart felt like it was going to explode. I stared at the doorknob glowing faintly in the moonlight. Then just below it, I saw something move, a shadow shifting across the crack under the door. It was tall, too tall to be my father, and it stayed there for a long time, just standing. Then, suddenly, the door handle stopped turning. I heard soft footsteps again, this time moving away, slow, dragging like before. The next morning, I finally told my father everything. He didn't laugh. He looked scared. He told me he'd found something strange the night he went to Grandpa's. He said that when he got home just after midnight, he noticed muddy footprints on the porch. Bare footprints. He thought maybe I had stepped outside for something, but when he checked, there were 2 sets. One his size and one much larger. He never told me that part until years later, but that night, I could see in his face that something about what I said matched what he already feared. That evening, before bed, he sprinkled salt by the door and muttered something his mother used to say, an old prayer for protection. But that didn't stop it. That night, the thing came again. And this time it spoke my name. That night still feels alive in my memory, even after all these years. The air was heavy again, just like that first night. Thick with summer heat, full of the smell of rain-soaked wood. My window was open a crack, and the curtains swayed gently in the breeze. The crickets outside had gone silent, which was always a bad sign in our part of town. I was lying in bed, staring at the ceiling, trying to convince myself I'd imagined the voice from the night before. But then I heard it again. Eli, that's my name. It came from right outside my door, soft and dragging, like someone whispering through a mouth full of dust. My stomach dropped. I sat up in bed, clutching the blanket, eyes locked on the doorknob. I didn't answer. I couldn't. My voice felt trapped in my throat. Then came the sound, knuckles scraping. Not knocking, scraping, like someone dragging their fingernails slowly down the wood. It went on for what felt like forever. Then it stopped, replaced by the slow, deliberate sound of breathing. That was when the temperature in my room began to drop. I could see my own breath fog in the air, even though it was the middle of July. I pulled the blanket tighter and prayed my dad would wake up. But when I looked out the window toward his room, I noticed something strange. His bedroom light was on, flickering faintly like a candle. I slid out of bed, my legs shaking, and tiptoed toward the door. The scraping had stopped. The air was dead silent now, except for the faint hum of the porch light outside. When I opened the door, the hallway was empty. But halfway down the hall, near the staircase, I saw it. A tall shadow, darker than the darkness around it. It didn't move like a person. It shimmered slightly, like heat rising off asphalt, only it was pitch black. I blinked, and in that instant, it was standing at the bottom of the stairs, looking straight up at me. That's when I saw its face, or what was left of one. There were hollow spaces where eyes should have been, and a mouth that didn't move, yet I could hear it speaking inside my head. Your father let me in. I gasped, stumbled back into my room, and slammed the door. I remember crying out for my dad, screaming until my throat burned, but he didn't come. The doorknob started to turn again. Slowly, painfully slow. Then it stopped. I pressed my back against the wall and stared at the door for hours, waiting for morning. When daylight finally came, I ran into my father's room. He was sitting on the edge of his bed, fully dressed, staring at the floor. His eyes were bloodshot, like he hadn't slept at all. Before I could speak, he said, "I saw it too." He told me he'd woken up in the middle of the night and seen a tall, dark figure standing just outside his window. He thought it was a trick of the light, until it started to smile. He said the smile didn't look human. It stretched too wide. When he ran outside to check, there were footprints in the dirt. Bare footprints, huge and deep, leading right up the porch. But there were no footprints leading away. That's when I told him what it said to me. When I told him, "Your father let me in," his face went pale. He looked toward the front door, silent for a long time. Then he whispered something I'll never forget. It wasn't lying. He said that years before I was born, when he and my mother first bought the house, a man had lived here alone. A quiet man, no family. He'd gone missing one night, vanished without a trace. The police found the front door wide open and muddy footprints leading from the woods to the porch, just like the ones my father saw. They never found his body. My dad said the realtor told him the house was old but clean. They moved in anyway. He said the night before he went to check on Grandpa, the night he left me alone, he'd been dreaming about that man, dreaming he was standing outside in the rain, asking to come inside. And when he woke up that night, in his half-asleep days, he did open the door. He just didn't remember locking it afterward. That summer, everything changed. We stopped sleeping in our rooms and started keeping the lights on all night. But that didn't stop the noises. Every few nights, we'd hear the same dragging footsteps on the porch, then across the hallway. Once, the radio turned on by itself, static whispering through the dark. By August, my father couldn't take it anymore. He packed our things, and we moved to a rental apartment closer to town. He told me not to look back when we drove away, but I did. As our truck rolled down the gravel road, I looked through the rear window, and I swear I saw the front door open slowly, just enough for a tall shadow to stand in the doorway, watching us leave. Years passed. We never went back. My father died in 2003. For a long time, I thought maybe what happened that summer was just a shared delusion. Stress, fear, imagination. Then, in 2012, curiosity got the better of me. I drove out there. The house was abandoned. The roof caved in, grass growing through the porch steps. But when I got close enough to see the front door, I froze. Because the door was still there, swollen with age, rotting from years of rain. But carved deep into the wood, right where my father used to lock it, were the words, "Thank you for letting me in." If you heard that knock at your door tonight, would you open it? Because my father did, and he never came back. Every child has that one tree they remember from their backyard, the one that felt alive. But mine didn't just feel alive. It watched me, and one summer night, in 1987, it moved. There's a mango tree behind my childhood home in Georgia. It's old, older than the house itself. My father said it was planted by the man who first owned the land back in the 1920s. When I was a kid, that tree terrified me. Not because of how it looked, though its branches were twisted like arms reaching for something that wasn't there, but because of what I saw under it one summer afternoon in 1994, something that shouldn't have been there, something that still visits me in my dreams. 20 years later, growing up in the small town of Dawsonville, life was quiet, predictable. Our house sat on the edge of a long, dusty road, surrounded by woods and wild grass. Summers were hot, the air thick with the hum of insects and the smell of soil baking under the sun. Behind our backyard stood that mango tree, tall, wide, and impossibly dark at night. My mom used to hang laundry on a wire nearby, and she'd always tell me to stay away from its shade after sunset. She said, "That tree's been here longer than we have, Jacob. Some things grow roots deeper than the earth." At the time, I thought she meant snakes or spiders. Now I know she meant something else. The first time I noticed it was a Saturday afternoon in late June. I was 10 years old, playing alone in the yard while my dad fixed a screen door. The sun was burning hot, the air buzzing with cicadas. I remember sitting under the mango tree, eating the ripe fruit that had fallen to the ground. The sweet, sticky juice ran down my fingers. Then I noticed it. A shadow that didn't move like the others. It stretched from behind the tree, long and thin, even though the sun was directly above me. I blinked, thinking maybe I was imagining it. But the shadow had fingers, long, jointed ones, and it was reaching toward me. I froze. The air went still. No sound. No wind. And then it moved. The shadow's hand curled and tapped the ground 3 times. Right beside me. Tap, tap, tap. I screamed and ran toward the porch. My dad came out yelling, thinking I'd been stung by a bee. When I tried to tell him what I saw, he laughed. "You've been watching too many of those monster movies, Jake." But that night, he locked the back door for the first time in years. A few days later, I woke up to a scratching sound outside my window. At first, I thought it was a branch swaying in the wind. But when I looked, the mango tree was still, not even a leaf moved. The scratching continued, slow and rhythmic, like nails dragging down the wooden siding. I called out, "Dad!" No answer. When I turned my head back to the window, I saw it. A figure standing beneath the mango tree. Tall, thin, completely black. Not like a person wearing black clothes, but like a shadow had peeled itself off the ground and was standing upright. Its face, if you could call it that, was a hollow shape darker than night, and it was looking right at me. I couldn't scream. I just stared as it slowly lifted one long, fingered arm and pointed straight at me. Then it stepped backward into the trunk of the tree and vanished. I didn't sleep the rest of that night. The next morning I told my mom. Her face went pale. She didn't laugh. Instead, she went outside, circled the tree 3 times, whispered something I couldn't hear, and nailed a small wooden cross to the trunk. When I asked why, she said, "Don't ever go near that tree again, Jacob. It's not what it looks like." I tried to obey her, but kids never fully listen, do they? A week later, I heard a sound around midnight, like someone whispering my name. "Jacob, Jacob." The voice came from the window. I peeked through the curtain, and there it was again, that same shadow figure, standing under the mango tree, pointing at the ground beneath it. I could swear I saw something there, a faint, glowing shape, half buried under the soil. I woke my dad and begged him to come look. By the time he did, nothing was there. He scolded me for crying wolf and told me to go back to bed. But when he turned to leave, I saw something behind him. The shadow had moved closer to the house. Its outline flickered like smoke, right behind him, under the window. I screamed again. My dad spun around, and for a second, he saw it too. His eyes widened and he whispered, "Dear God." Then it disappeared. The next morning, he dug around the mango tree with a shovel, refusing to tell me why. After a few minutes, he stopped, and I'll never forget the look on his face. He'd found something, a small, decayed wooden box. Inside was a child's shoe, just one. He covered it back up without saying a word. That evening, he chopped down the mango tree himself. It took all day, but by sunset it was gone. Or so we thought. That night, as we sat in the living room, the house shook with a loud crack, like with splitting. We ran outside, and there it was. The mango tree stood again, tall as ever, right where it used to be. Not a single cut on its trunk. My dad fell to his knees. My mom started praying. The air around the tree shimmered, and I saw the shadow again. Only this time, it wasn't just one. There were several, all merging into each other, all whispering. Their voices soft but furious. I heard my own name, my father's, my mother's, then one sentence that froze my blood. give back what was taken. My mom fainted. My dad dragged me inside and locked every door. We didn't sleep. By morning, the mango tree was gone again, just a patch of dark soil in its place. We moved out of that house 2 weeks later. Now, decades later, I drive by that property sometimes. A new family lives there. The house is painted blue now. The yard looks normal. But last year, I saw something that made me pull over. A little girl was playing in the backyard, and behind her, just for a moment, I saw the shadow again, standing under a newly grown mango tree, watching. Every traveler has that one night they never forget, not because of what they saw, but because of what they heard. In 1985, I checked into a quiet guest house off the old highway. Room 9 looked normal, until the whispers began. If you ever travel through small towns, you've probably seen those old roadside motels that still have vacancy signs flickering at night. The ones that look like they belong in another century. Well, in the summer of 1996, I stayed in one of those places, a small guest house off Highway 14 called the Lagos Guest House. It was supposed to be cheap and quiet, but what I heard inside room 6 still follows me every night in whispers. I was 22 then, a college student on a road trip from Savannah, Georgia to New Orleans with my best friend, Marcus. We were broke, running on gas station food and caffeine, chasing adventure before life got serious. We'd been driving all day when we saw the sign. Lagos Guest House, $25 per night, breakfast included. It stood off an old Tulane road, half hidden by oak trees and Spanish moss. The building was small, 6 rooms in a row, paint peeling, porch lights dim. The parking lot was gravel, scattered with puddles from an earlier rain. Marcus laughed and said, "Looks haunted, man. Perfect for a horror movie." I grinned. "Yeah, let's just hope the breakfast isn't cursed." We pulled in. An elderly woman ran the place. Her name was Mrs. Ade, with a soft African accent and tired eyes. She wore a patterned shawl and carried an old brass carrying that jingle when she walked. "Welcome," she said warmly. "You are lucky." Only one room left. Room 6. She handed us the key. The tag was a worn piece of wood, carved with the number 6 and a faint drawing of what looked like a bird. Inside, the guest house smelled faintly of incense and rain. The wallpaper was faded, patterned with strange geometric shapes. There were tribal masks on the walls, small clay pots lined up on a shelf, and a huge wooden crucifix above the reception desk. Marcus whispered, "Feels like a church and a museum had a baby." Mrs. Ade chuckled quietly. "This place is old. My husband built it long ago, before he passed." There was something in her tone, pride mixed with sadness. Then she said something that didn't make sense until later. "If you hear voices at night, don't answer them. They're not for you." I thought she was joking. Marcus did too. We both laughed. She didn't. Room 6 was small. 2 beds, a cracked mirror, an old ceiling fan that squeaked when it turned. The window faced backwards, and the trees pressed close, almost touching the glass. We dumped our bags, turned on the small TV, and argued over what to watch. But around midnight, the static on the screen began to distort, faint whispers mixed with low humming. Marcus hit the TV. "Piece of junk." The picture snapped back. We went to sleep soon after, both too tired to care. I don't know what time it was when I woke up, but the room was pitch dark. The ceiling fan had stopped. The air was still, heavy, and that's when I heard it. A voice, whispering, faint, soft, right by my ear. At first, I thought it was Marcus talking in his sleep. But when I turned, I saw he was fast asleep, back turned, mouth open, breathing slow. The whisper came again. "Do you hear me?" It was a woman's voice. Cold. Close. I froze. My chest tightened. Then I heard another whisper, lower, male. "Don't listen to her." The 2 voices overlapped, one from the left side of my bed, the other from behind the bathroom door. Whispering, murmuring, arguing. I sat up, heart pounding, trying to see through the darkness. That's when I noticed something strange. The wallpaper. The geometric patterns on the walls seemed to be moving, slowly shifting, like shadows swimming beneath the surface. The next morning, I told Marcus what happened. He laughed. Dude, maybe the incense they use here got you high. But Mrs. Ade didn't laugh when I mentioned it to her at breakfast. She went quiet, then said, "Did you speak to them?" I said, "No." She nodded once, relieved. "Good. Don't. Some doors are not meant to open." I thought she was being dramatic, but something about her eyes told me she wasn't joking. That afternoon, Marcus went into town to get snacks while I stayed back to rest. I lay on the bed, watching sunlight spill across the floor. Everything was calm, peaceful, until I heard it again, a faint whisper. But this time, it came from the bathroom. "He's not coming back." I froze. "You're alone now." My skin crawled. I grabbed my phone, but the screen wouldn't turn on. The whisper came again, louder now. "Look at the mirror." I didn't want to. I really didn't. But my body moved anyway. The bathroom door creaked open on its own. The mirror above the sink, old and spotted, seemed to ripple like water, and in its reflection, I didn't see myself. I saw a man, dark skin, hollow eyes, mouth sewn shut with black thread. He stood behind me, but when I turned around, no one was there. The light flickered, the mirror cracked, then silence. Marcus came back later, and I didn't say a word. I just wanted to leave. We packed that evening, planning to check out before sunset. But when we went to the front desk, Mrs. Ade was gone. The reception area was empty, lights off, no sound except the faint ticking of a wall clock. Then I saw something on the counter, a small wooden box, open. Inside was a rolled-up piece of parchment tied with red string. Marcus said, "Dude, don't touch that." But I did. I untied the string, unrolled the paper, and found a single line written in neat handwriting. "Room 6 belongs to the lost." Marcus and I exchanged looks. That's when the floor creaked behind us. We turned and saw someone standing at the end of the hallway. A woman, pale, dressed in white, long hair covering her face. She didn't move, didn't even breathe. We ran out the door, across the gravel lot, into the car. When I looked back, she was standing outside, watching us. Only, there was something wrong with her face. It wasn't blurred or hidden. It was gone. Just smooth skin where her features should have been. We drove through the night, barely speaking. By dawn, we were 50 miles away. We stopped at a diner to rest. Marcus went to the restroom, and I sat alone, staring at my reflection in the window. That's when I heard it again. "Do you hear me?" The whisper, faint inside my head. I turned to look. No one was near me. Then I saw my reflection blink. I hadn't blinked. That was 29 years ago. Marcus, and I never spoke about it again. He died 5 years later in a car accident. They said he fell asleep at the wheel. But when I identified his body, the coroner mentioned something strange. His ears were damaged, like someone whispered too close, too loud. Now, sometimes when I'm lying in bed, I hear that same whisper again. "Do you hear me?" I don't answer. But sometimes the walls move just a little, and in the stillness, I swear I can hear another voice, deeper, angry, saying, "You shouldn't have opened the door." Last year, out of curiosity, I tried to find the Lagos guest house again. It's not there anymore. The road where it stood is overgrown. No sign, no building, nothing. But when I stopped at the edge of the woods, I saw something nailed to a tree, a small wooden key tag, the number 6, and drawn beneath it, a bird, just like the one on my old room key. If you ever stay in a motel and hear a whisper under your bed, don't answer it. Because once you do, you'll never sleep alone again. Like, share and subscribe, and get ready. The next story will make you question what's hiding behind your walls.